A core definition of anti-Semitism is blaming the Jews for everything. Would you believe that 1/5 of young people in New York, 20%, think that the Jews caused the Holocaust? Today on The Dershow Show, we'll be talking about a recent poll that showed abysmal ignorance by young people about the Holocaust. I'm Alan Dershowitz, and this is The Dershow Show. Tonight is the beginning of Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year. Jews all over the world will be gathering with their families, mostly by Zoom, by remote, but celebrating the beginning of the Jewish New Year. I want to convey my best wishes not only to Jews, but to people all over the world, that I hope the New Year, measured by the Jewish New Year, is a better one for everybody, is a better one for those suffering from the virus, from racism. I think last year was not a particularly good one for the world, and I hope next year will be far better. The Jews have a prayer, Lashana Haba B'Yerushalayim, next year in Jerusalem. My prayer is Lashana Haba, next year may we all achieve our goals, may world peace become a reality, may we move closer to equality and to the kind of world that we want to bestow upon our children. But the Jewish New Year is beginning with a terrible, terrible headline. The headline from a recent poll conducted among people between the ages of 17 and 39, millennials, Gen X generation, shows an abysmal ignorance of the Holocaust, the greatest tragedy that ever befell the Jewish people, and the worst form of genocide in modern human history. Would you believe that in New York State, 1 out of every 5 people, 20% of those who were surveyed in the poll, believe that the Jews caused the Holocaust? They have no idea that 6 million Jews were the victims of the Holocaust. Sure, they heard there was something called the Holocaust and it has to do with Jews, so Jews caused the Holocaust. A very substantial number, 63% of those polls, had no idea of the number of Jews killed. Many thought it was lower than 2 million. The figure of 6 million, which is an iconic figure that should be taught in every school around the world, is simply unknown to 63% of young people in the United States. The figures go on and on and on. 23% believe that the Holocaust is a myth, that it never happened, that there was no Holocaust. How can one explain this abysmal lack of knowledge? Well, I think it's part of a bigger problem. The bigger problem is that we're failing to educate our young people about history. For them, history begins the day Black Lives Movement opened, or the day the Palestinians protested the lack of statehood, or the day that transgender and gay people were discriminated against, or the Supreme Court rendered its decision in favor. These are all very important issues, and I think students should know about gay and transgender rights. They should know about the history of Stonewall. They should know about Martin Luther King. They should know about Black Lives Matter, but they also have to know about the American Revolution, the French Revolution, the Russian Revolution. And they certainly have to know about the Holocaust, because the Holocaust affects so many people living in the United States today. So many of us are descendants of victims of the Holocaust. The Holocaust is not that long ago, 70-something years ago, when the walls of America were closed to Holocaust victims. You know, we know about the effort of the current president to build a wall. We know about restrictions on immigration that currently affect people from Mexico and South American countries. How many Americans know that Jews were barred from entry into the United States for the years prior to the Holocaust and during the Holocaust? How many know that when Jews tried to emigrate into Canada to avoid the gas chambers, the Minister of Absorption in Canada said, even one Jew is too many, we're not taking any. And then following the war, Canada took tens of thousands of Nazis who came from the Ukraine and from other parts of Eastern and Central Europe. These histories are important because those who forget the lessons of history are destined to repeat them. And these lessons are not being taught today in school. We're so concerned with political correctness. The University of Chicago English department has said that the department is now dedicated to focusing all of its attention on the issues of anti-blackness and the issues of indigenous people and displaced people. What does that mean? Does that mean that the English department will not have its students read Elie Wiesel's Night? Yeah, they should read Alice Walker. Yeah, they should read many, many other black writers. Yeah, the canon should be extended to include women and people of different backgrounds. And yes, we should have diversity in education, but that doesn't mean banning books about the Holocaust. Some of the greatest books in literature have been written about the Holocaust and by Holocaust survivors. My dear friend and mentor, Elie Wiesel's book Night should be required reading in every elementary school, high school, and college in the country. It should be part of the canon as well, so that when the next polls are taken and students are asked, do you know what Auschwitz is? They won't say, no, we never heard of that. What is that? The vast majority of American students couldn't name a single death camp during the Holocaust. The ignorance is just abysmal. And ignorance of the past is going to reflect itself in ignorance of the present and ignorance in the future. Now you might say it's much more important to teach about anti-racism, to talk about anti-gay, to talk about other forms of bigotry, because those bigotries still exist in the United States. We still have structural racism. We still have anti-gay and anti-lesbian and anti-other aspects of life that still plague us today. That's all true. But so is the reality of anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism is increasing all over the world. We're seeing synagogues attacked. We're seeing Jews on university campuses denied the right to express their views. We're seeing a double standard applied to Jewish supporters of Israel on university campuses today. We're seeing acts of vandalism and anti-Semitism. Swastikas being painted on fraternities that are predominantly Jewish on some university campuses. So anti-Semitism is a real problem today. Just recently in Germany, a number of police officers were suspended, appropriately suspended, because they were praising Hitler and praising Nazism. But I have to tell you, Germany has done a better job in trying to root out anti-Semitism than many other countries in which anti-Semitism still survives. But you cannot battle anti-Semitism without understanding the implications of what anti-Semitism can cause. Anti-Semitism caused the Holocaust. And if students believe the Holocaust is a myth, if students believe that Jews caused the Holocaust, if students can't tell you 6 million Jews were murdered, if students don't read Elie Wiesel's Night and other great books about the Holocaust, if students simply have blotted that aspect of history from memory, then the recurrence of anti-Semitism is inevitable. And so, on this Rosh Hashanah, on this beginning of the Jewish New Year, let us dedicate ourselves to making sure that students and that young people are educated about all the past horrors of the world, about racism, about sexism, about homophobia, but also about anti-Semitism, and especially about the Holocaust. The good thing about this survey is that a majority of people, even though they didn't know much about the Holocaust, thought that the Holocaust should be taught in schools around the country. And it's not being taught by many schools around the country. In fact, there are efforts and pressures to try to eliminate Holocaust education because Holocaust education is seen as in some way supportive of Israel. And supporting Israel is verboten on many campuses today because it's thought to undercut the Palestinian case or the Palestinian claim. Well, you know, there was a great hero of the Palestinian Authority recently who tried to build a museum of the Holocaust on the West Bank so that Palestinians can learn the lessons of the Holocaust as well. Remember, Palestinians, the leadership of the Palestinians was deeply implicated in the Holocaust. The leader of the Palestinians, the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, went to Berlin to spend the war years with Adolf Hitler. Adolf Hitler swore to him that if he won the war, he would bring death camps to Israel, to what was then Palestine, and murdered the Jews who lived there. The Grand Mufti was a war criminal. He collaborated with Hitler in the murder of Jews in various parts of Europe. And it's very important for Palestinians to learn what happened, sometimes in their name, during the Holocaust. But it's very important for everybody in the world, Jew and non-Jew alike, Muslim, Christian, atheist, to know our history. And the most shameful part of our history in the last 100 years was the Holocaust. And so I hope that next time we do a poll, all Americans, all people around the world, will see and understand what can happen if you allow anti-Semitism to reach its nadir in the form of gas chambers, death camps, and the Holocaust. So I'm angry. I'm angry at our educators. I'm angry at our media. I'm angry at those who are responsible for educating young people. And frankly, I'm angry at young people between the ages of 18 or 17 and 37. Learn history, learn the facts, learn what happened, learn what your parents and grandparents went through. Only then will you become fully educated citizens of America and of the world. This is Alan Dershowitz wishing everybody a Shana Tova, a very good year, and welcome again to The Dersh Show. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? I want to hear from you. Call our listener line, 216-710-0050. I want to hear your questions, your comments, your criticisms, and your opinions. Remember, all calls are recorded, and we reserve the right to use your questions and comments on the air. Again, the listener line is 216-710-0050. I look forward to hearing from you. The Dersh Show is available on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you want to make sure that you or your children are not part of this ignorant generation about the Holocaust, there are books you can read. In addition to Elie Wiesel's classic Night, of course, there's the other classic, Anne Frank's Diary, which gives you a young person's perception of what was going on during the Holocaust. You can also read Deborah Lipstadt's two books, one Beyond Belief and the other Holocaust Denial. Or if you're interested in films, you can watch a recent film called Denial, which tells the story of Holocaust denial. Or you can see Schindler's List, which obviously was seen by millions of people, but perhaps not in this generation. To make sure you are not part of the ignorant generation and your children are not part, have them read, have them view, have them understand what people went through 80 years ago.